Welcome to Implausible Nature, your home for all things Black Templar. On today's video, we have a very special guest, our very own David Anderson, that we are great friends with, joining us today to talk about his GT win this past weekend at the Dumpster Fire GT in Philly. There was actually two GT wins this weekend. Ben Neal was the other one, but David's finished first, so he is the first Black Templar player with the new supplement to win a GT. And it was based on who you played. It looked like some pretty tough matchups. Although you said before we started the show that this was easier than you expected, which to me, I want to know we're going to get into that because that just seems a little bit crazy. But thank you so much for joining us and for getting, as we record this is Monday. The GT ended literally yesterday. So thank you for being available to come on the channel and give us an interview first. We greatly appreciate that. So
That's my pleasure.
welcome. Yeah.
It's my pleasure. This is a lot of fun. We were joking on it as I jumped on this. I got you guys a BT win, but it was with an asterisk. And so then I was like, let's try it again, but with Glass Task Force. And now we got a mini asterisk.
A smaller asterisk this
Smaller
Smaller
asterisks, yeah.
time.
So honestly, yes, okay, Gladius. Some people don't like it because it's not a BT detachment, but I mean, you have plenty of BT units in this list, and I don't. On the one hand, yes, is Gladius thematically Black Templar? Not necessarily, because it just does everything. But at the same time, a win's a win, and it is Black Templars with actual Black Templar units. So,
From what I understand, and I'm not up on the lore, there's three types of Warhammer players, and many of them are a combination of the three. I'm of one. There's the competitor, there's the hobbyist, and there's the lore masters.
yeah,
But of the little bit of lore I know, I don't believe they really care about the codices very much. They kind of do their own
yeah,
thing and kind
they
of
do
break their
whatever
own
they want.
rules. So that's what I'm thematic that way.
Yeah, you just do whatever
Yeah,
you want. Take
that
it.
is true.
Yeah,
That
but
is true.
it's I want to say unfortunately, but it's just the design of the game. Gladys Task Force GW just did a great job writing it right out of the gate. So we just had a very powerful detachment available to us for Space Marines. And the name of the list for Atlantic City Open, which was just generic Space Marines and no characters, was my army gets to do whatever he wants. And that's literally what's so great about Gladys Task Force: advance and shoot, advance and charge, fall back, shoot and charge at all times, essentially, even for just a single CP. And now, you take away Oath, so I lose my rerolls to hit on one target and the +1 to wound. But now I get full rerolls to hit on 2 melee units and 2 tanks, and +1 to wound on all melee essentially. Or I'm rarely not wounding on 3s and at worst 5s. Yeah, it. Sasha and I were kind of going back and forth on this, and this is Codex, and kind of we actually spent all of the weekend together, including all day Friday, and we were even up till 11 o'clock testing some stuff out, and we were just kind of struggling with trying to get a sense of the value, but the combination of the two, as I'm playing through and around round 3, I'm like, wow, this is actually really powerful. So, and yes, the last 2 games felt a lot easier than the first 3 games, and then actually easier than Atlantic City Open.
So let's talk about your list because it's like I said, it's got Black Templars units in it, but it is for a lot of our players who I think probably a good majority of our players are not, well, let me rephrase that. Probably 99% of our players are not looking to or able to compete at the level that you are, right? We have a very small percentage of players that are competing at the highest levels, which is what you're doing now. So sometimes you have to take some things that just you look at it and you're like, why would I take that? That doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't feel on theme or whatever, but it gets the job done, right? So, for some of our players that are like, this is a crazy looking list. Sometimes it has to be because that's the meta, right? And when you want to win GTs and play at the highest level, you have to take some things that seem like wacky, but they work.
Yeah,
So,
but
do you want to, Bob? Do you have something to say?
yeah, I do want to like jump in here. Like, it's not too big of a departure from what was successful in like Righteous Crusaders. And
Mm-hmm.
I do want to make that point. You added a couple of units here.
Yeah,
And so I do want to say a lot of it is going to come down to player skill, because there is, obvious when we get into this list, you're going to see what I mean by that, because this is the epitome of MSU. So
yeah.
your units are not sticking around. They are going to die if you don't play them correctly. So that's really kind of what I think what our audience is really going to want to know, because the list itself is very similar to something that we would be running just a few months ago. It just, how are you surviving the Death Guard meta? How are you surviving the Chaos Imperial Knight meta with something like this? Because right now, those guys just evaporate based
Yeah.
on just looking on paper what your list is.
Well,
So that's
and
really kind of what we're gonna.
to add one more thing before we jump into the list itself, a lot of these units are units that Bob and I have been talking about as competitive units that you need to be running forever, right? Ballistas, jump pack intercessors, scouts, sword bros, right? So not really anything in here is like too crazy off the wall. When you just look at it, you're kind of like, how did he survive, right? Like you said. So yeah. So David, why don't you walk us through your list a little bit and give us some insight into that?
Sure. I've said this before on other videos, and I'll just reiterate. Whenever I start a list, it starts with a deck, and yes, I play at a very high level, so I want to get that out of the way. And I think that's important to say too, because it is a differentiator, because what people are looking for and some of the questions they ask, um, you have to understand who I am as a player, which is I am purely competitive. I do enjoy the fluff. This is my favorite army for sure. But I will lean into the more competitive and separate myself from the fluffy. So that's hopefully answers some questions from players I've been hearing from, like, why don't you use this or that attachment unit, whatever. It's because I am here to min max. I'm going to World Championship in November, going to Nova. I play with Sasha quite often, so we try to push ourselves aggressively. So that's that. Hopefully that answers a little bit of that. So when it comes to list construction, I'm a huge fan of MSU. I love playing small units that trade up, so they have to be able to be independent. If they're off on their own, I need to be able to have faith that they can kind of handle themselves. Trade up, so I guess that's the second thing. And then I also want to be able to comfortably score, and I say that I really want to reiterate that, comfortably score just about every card of the deck. I never want to be that guy, and you hear this when you're playing a Grand Tournament or RCT, when a player goes, "Oh, I drew this," I know I already have an edge. Like, thank you for telling me that you are regretting some of the way your army is built because of some of the cards you get. So most of these units you'll see here are in there in that design in mind. Like, that's why you see Assault Intercessor with jump packs. So you always see Scouts, some of the units that you already spoke about. So I see the Callidus Assassin. That serves Tooth Fronts, that can help me solve for some cards. But we'll get into it. It's extremely powerful in a melee army to have Callidus Assassin. But even like the Ballistus Dreads, that those don't have teeth. It's a nice feeling if they do pop off and get something through, and I can roll d6 for damage. But honestly, it's an OC4 2-up body that's T10. It only costs 140, probably 150 here in a minute. But even at 150, I'll probably still stick it there, because guess what? That's two primaries that I can just stick there and you got to deal with. So I focus on the MSU and solving for the deck, and then I flesh it out with a good mix of both shooting and melee, because I think for my play style, I need both of them. I want you to feel threatened coming in too close, but I also don't want you to feel like you can just stay out in the open in the back, because I've got explosive, dangerous shooting, as well as the Sword Brothers that if you come on the inside, I can really devour. So some of the specifics here. If I know there's two of my lists running around, I will say there was an issue with I had accidentally put in three marshals. It was actually a captain. So I played it as a captain the entire time, so I don't need to make a Reddit apology or anything like that. So he played as a captain. Tio knew about it, so it wasn't a big deal. It was the same points and everything, but not a marshal with the honor vehement. I used a captain with honor vehement. He's been one of my MVP players in all my lists with honor vehement attached to assault intercessors because full rerolls to wound on his dev turn on an objective can be very powerful because devastating wounds are a nice premium in this game. Um, you're going to see this in every Black Templar list, I think, here. 2 Castellans, 2 Marshals. Why? Because you're doing 2 Sword Brother and the Bricks. And when we scroll down and look at the Sword Brother, they're 4 model units. Because when you do the math, it turns out it's just a 4 model unit with those 2 additionals. Not only do they sit comfortably in a Repulsor Executioner with 1 seat open for an Emperor's Champion, just in case, but furthermore, that's just about enough damage to kill an Atropos with as long as you soften up with some shooting. Where do I get the shooting from? Probably the MVP Hour book. These are Repulsor Executioners for 220. This is extremely good. I don't want to do too much hyperbole because maybe GW will hear this and want to add another 20 points to this. But full rerolls to hit on both of these tanks. Not only that, yeah, you got to be within 12, so you got to have a scouting unit. But we'll get into that. That's pretty easy to acquire,
It's
especially
where we
mid
want to
game.
be anyway.
Yeah, we want to be there anyways. But they're transports, which is a huge flex into a melee army. And also they're T12 and 16 wounds and have access to smoke. So people look at Space Marine tanks, they think gladiators and pulsars. Okay, they're T10. I'm going to be able to pop this. I'll put you AP4 shots. And no, then you start saying they start rolling their wound shots, and they're all of a sudden their T10 missiles are wounding on fives. Like, oh, that's T12. Even the big knights are only T11. How'd that happen? And they got to shoot through 16 points. So it's a big, beefy tank and solves for a lot of things. And of course, it has every gun in the book. I've always loved
Yeah.
these tanks. I use them occasionally. I started taking them out of my list, but Sean Olson, who runs the Triple Executioner list and won Maryland Open last year, he encouraged me to get back into the Repulsive Executioner bandwagon. And here we are, new
Here
codex,
we
and
are.
this has become an S tier unit out of the book.
Yeah, and I don't. To be clear, there's been a lot of talk on the Discord and in other places. It's like, oh, it's gonna get nerfed. It's going up in points. Blah blah blah. Like, yes, it's very good, but do I think it is like? Is it that much better than the Codex version? No, because it gets full rerolls to hit too against the thing with the gun that you really want it, and yeah, the rerolls to hit are very helpful on the trash guns, but they're all almost all of them are AP 0.
Yeah.
So you're not like the rerolls help you some, but you're still AP 0. The reason why it didn't get a ton of um, looks in most lists, I think, in the Codex, is because it's like one, dependent on Oath, and two, its ability is bad, like really bad. Versus you look at a Lancer, which gives itself a wound reroll and a damage reroll for free. The Lancer puts out more damage on average because of that. But um, I think for us, it makes sense as a really good tank, not only because it now we don't need Oath for it, number one, but it's also a transport,
Yeah.
right? And it holds 7, so you can put Blade Guard with a character, 5 Sword Bros with a character, 6 Sword Bros with an Emperor's Champion. 6 or a squad and a lone op Emperor's Champion. So it does the two things that we want to do. Is we want to have a transport, and we have some big guns. So it solves two things at once, and that's why it's so good for us now, because it actually has a good ability. So I don't think it's overpowered or too cheap or anything like that. So
Yeah, and I never found myself quite outright killing things with it. And here's the reason why. And I appreciate you us talking this down. So GW was like, okay, maybe we don't need to actually add 20 points to this. So I appreciate you saying this. But the other thing too, to be devil's advocate in my own excitement, is this: Oath also, remember, gives you +1 to wound. And
if you're
when you
not, yeah, divergent,
Yeah, so
yeah,
that big gun's really nice, but you're wounding on threes, and you're gonna miss a lot of threes in the game. And I was always
yeah,
like rolling my eyes, like this big old guns. I'm gonna miss one. I'm gonna miss the wound. Sure enough, that
yep,
happened quite often.
Yep.
It's funny that I will say that on the other end of the spectrum, it makes a great Overwatch unit. Just the Overwatch threat is alone. In fact, it had arguably won me one of my games, my first Death Card game, because he was trying to take a bloat drone to take my home objective. He had bottom turn scoring, and I overwatched, and I popped out 2 6s on that big gun. Wounded twice, and he failed both saves, and he took like 12 damage to a drone. I was like, oh, that was the game. Thank you. So
Yeah.
it does have a nice Overwatch threat. I know a lot of people are asking about the Outriders. We'll talk about that, I'm sure, soon.
Yeah.
I like having an impulsor. This is actually both Sasha and I. He likes running rhinos. I like having an impulsor. We like having one little small transport. It gives me the ability to do some additional movement shenanigans in late game. And also just an inexpensive 85-point unit that's 11 wounds and T9 and with a shield dome. It's not the easiest thing to shift. You have to commit to it if you really want it off the board. And you're like 85 points, but yeah, it's OC2 sitting on that objective. I think that covers everything. Outriders.
Yeah. I do want to ask you, with because the honor vehement on a marshal is also really good. Um, do you still like? Obviously, you took him. I mean, why the captain over a marshal with that upgrade?
Yeah, so that's a holdover from this, and as well as the Outriders were kind of a holdover from my old generic Space Marine list that I had a lot of success with at Atlantic City. And so the captain specifically, I think that is nothing. I know that's one of the first things to go, because with Space Marines, Ultramarines, or just generic Space Marines with Oath, full rerolls to hit is actually really important. And full rerolls to wound. Yes, you get that, but what I found without Oath, our melee units are rough because especially when you're hitting on threes, because the rest of the unit, the assault intercessors, are only hitting on threes, and I
Yeah.
found myself losing a good 16 to 25 to 27% of my damage output with this thing. He served a good purpose. I think if I kept him in here, here's what I would do. Is first off, I didn't need the shield dome on the impulsor, so I usually do the comms array. And what I usually do very first turn is I'll just use my captain CP for free and say, I'm putting you in tactical doctrine, just because I want the extra movement for just in case. And it's next to the impulsor, so on a 5-up I get it back, and so I get it. So I'll farm CP right out of the gate.
Right.
So
For
that's a
free.
clever thing I use, yeah, for free. So I'll do that real quick, and then I'll move everything around where I want it. But that and the Outriders, I think I have to go because, yeah, them not being they're not as independent as the Sword Brethren unit, which is much more powerful. And I felt that I could allocate those points elsewhere.
Yeah. And too, looking at your list, the bones of it are like very similar to stuff you've run a lot before, like two ballistas, captain, assault inst, the outriders, jump hack intercessors, like scouts. Like that's the bones of almost every one of your lists I've seen recently.
Yeah, I'm a shoot Templar kind of guy, and so if you think about the way I've played my prior lists, it was basically I eliminated my Stern Guard and my Inceptors, and I included uh, the Sword Brethren. Sorry, had a what am I playing? Black Templar, Sword Brethren. So I eliminated the Stern Guard as well as the Inceptors, and I've slotted in Sword Brethren, which um, this goes back and forth. It's like, hey, what am I going to take to Worlds? And I've been going back and forth on this because they're both equally really powerful. What I do enjoy about this list is Sword Brethren is really a flex and skill. I think any melee army, if you are really good with melee units, like Sasha's incredible. He's running Creation's Bile right now, which is like 85% melee out of his list, or closer to 75% melee right now. It's a really good expression of skills if you get really good at these melee units, and the synergy of all these tools, especially with those transports. I felt that I could actually outperform my Stern Guard, and it turned out that when I said at the beginning of the call, when I think of my other games, I'm like, if Stern Guard here were here, how would this play out? No, actually, my Sword Brethren outperformed the Stern Guard in a lot of cases because of the flexibility that they have.
How do you
Yeah,
like the
absolutely.
how do you like the 4-man unit versus a 5?
That
Do you
helps me
think
get
the extra guy
to
is
what was
worth
I
it
at?
or no?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I can flex into 13. Yeah. So the reason why I did that, I'm just counting to make sure I I'm saying this right. I try to have at least 13 units. Again, I like MSU, so that to free up the points, I knew I can drop it down to 4, and then when I do the damage output math on paper, it was still really solid. It would just require that I have help with the repulsor executioners.
Yeah.
So drop the points, take the sacrifice because the repulsor executioners can make up on the offensive firepower, and then it gave me a full extra unit, and so brought me back up to 13 units. So 13 is kind of that's where I start. I want to have 13 units.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Sounds about like what I do. Anytime my lists are less than 13, 14, I'm redrawing it because I love the MSU playstyle. I think it works best in general. Alex can attest for this and some of the games that we've played against each other. But I think the most success I've played is having those multiple units. I think you hamstring yourself in both primary and secondary if you don't. Uh, and really trading up is key on some of those. So I'm going to touch on the elephant in the room here. I think, at least for me, looking at a list, and that's all I do every day is look at lists. This Outrider unit is killing me here. Let's talk about the Outriders.
You mean my
First off, you
MVP
said,
won me 3 games? I'm gonna tell you how to the
ah,
secret of the Outriders.
all right, let's talk about some Outriders, man.
So the Outriders.
So
So, go ahead. What's your question?
presumably you're getting those things out there because you're using them for screening purposes. You also obviously need to get something in range of so you can get the repulsor executioner out there. So semi durable.
There's a lot of head shaking going on
That's
here.
not
Not
at all what I'm
not
using those for.
not all right. Let's. That's why you're here,
The
right?
big old. No, there is a temptation to use Outriders for exactly as you said. They're T5. They can, zoom them around the board. You can be really cute, screen, but you'll lose them very quickly to against a good player. They're going to pop those things really, really fast.
Yeah,
So
that's
actually,
exactly. I was like,
if I see Outriders on you, and they're in front of me, they're dead. No, actually, this is actually just a pragmatic list creation system position here. I had the points, and I've used Outriders in the same capacity multiple times. So this wasn't just, oh, I need 80 points, let me fill something in here. I've done this a couple of times with some mixed success, and overall pretty successful. So when you think about infiltrators and screening your back, especially like on search and destroy, you can actually cover all search and destroy with infiltrators, right? Because especially if you create the little L, it'll cover out at about 31% of the board or something really high. Outriders actually cover quite a bit themselves too. So it turns out if you take Outriders and stick one kind of, um, on the corner, like pointing towards the corner, and the two others kind of lapped out like this and 2 inches away, you cover a large part of the cover of the corner, almost as much as I think a little bit more technically than just a regular 5-man squad of Space Marines. Not as much as infiltrators, but then you have the added bonus of this. After round 3 or 4, especially if your home objective doesn't count as much for primary, then they turn into that late game. Oh, I've lost my scouts. Let me get my outriders out now so they can start doing some extra additional scoring positions for me. Or I've lost my Callidus assassin, and I need this fast thing to zoom around and get some additional scoring. Like if I drew aerial denial late in the game, so then you go through the crack and go straight to the center because there's nothing there late in the game. So it does serve that purpose. So one, actually screening my back room or my back objective, and 2, late game, just getting them out and then helping me score if I've lost scouts or something small. But it is actually the very first thing I'm going to drop from that list.
yeah, okay. I was gonna be like, "Eee."
What are you going to drop him for?
I actually think I'm going to put them intercessors in there. I found that if I can sticky my objective, so this will kind of go into some of my games here. I found that up to this point, there's just this fear of protecting your back objective, and yeah, there's some value in that. Like it's just, but a lot of people are just so driven by this fear of packing their fear of protecting their back objective that they'll put important units back there. Now we don't all have access to poxwalkers. They're 50 points and you can string them out to do that. And if we had those, we would. But for Space Marines, we kind of struggle with that. And what you end up doing is sacrificing anywhere between 10% or, I'm sorry, 5% or less of your army to just babysit. And what I found, especially with this list and these repulsor executioners, because these models are so big, is that I can keep my sword brethren in there and keep the repulsor executioner positioned in a way that if they did bring anything back there, I'm just going to bounce back there and have some sword brethren kill that stuff off, clean up, and go back in the tank. So what I'll do is I'll get intercessors in there, sticky the objectives, still screen when it's appropriate, but I'll throughout the flow of the game, I know I'll get to a point where I'm comfortable giving up my back objective and almost tempting them to come back there so that I can relieve pressure off the rest of my army. For example, my final round, actually, the last round, Will with the Death Guard, he had 2 of the shrouds and strategic reserve like they all do. It's actually deep strike because they can go within 6. He brought them in on turn. He rapid ingressed them on I think turn 2, and he did it on my back objective, and that was great because he did. I had already scored my primary. He did charge and successfully the Outriders. He took out an 80-point unit, and my sword brethren came out. My repulsor took out 1 with just the baby shots, and I fit the big gun at something else. Baby shots took out 1 and brought 1 down to 2. Sword brethren absolutely cleaned up, consolidated, and then on the next time they were able to move, I was able to get back into the tank to move forward. So I just traded 80 points to clear out the shroud unit. I don't know about you, but I would trade that any day. So
Yeah.
that's just kind of my thought process on that. So I felt after completing this grand tournament, drop that intercessors, use them to screen still, but either way they're sticky so they can leave later, or do what I did there and not necessarily fear if they do decide to drop something back there.
Yeah, and another thing too with intercessors is I feel like they're deceptively fast because their guns have assault. So anytime you're going to move them, you might as well advance them unless you, for whatever reason, you want to charge something. But get that extra movement from the advance because you can still shoot all their guns, uh,
Their
and
shooting's pretty
uh,
good.
and their shooting's pretty good. It'll clear chaff pretty easily, and it's you got a little grenade launcher in there, and their melee is also not awful. You can get a
Yeah,
power
got
fist in
power fist.
there.
Yeah,
They're +1 to wound for most things, so they're not awful. And they'll sticky objectives for you. So
yeah,
I really like intercessors for Templars because for all the reasons you said too, like sticky that objective and just run off it and dare your opponent to come back there and then like, oh hello, here's some sword brethren to clean you off the table. Thanks, bye.
yeah. I'm trying to bring up my list because for my other events, I'm pretty sure I've used them multiple. I probably even use them in Atlantic City. I've used them quite often. You're right. You hit them all the points in the head there, but they are pretty valuable for 80 points.
Yeah. So tell us about your opponents and your games. Who did you face and kind of what were your challenges?
Sure. So I had 5 opponents. Got my notes here. Chris with Eldar. We had Chris with Eldar round 1. And then we had Mark, who's a good friend of mine. He helped me early on in this game. He actually lives close by to me as well with his Tyranids. Chris and I played Purge on Crucible. By the way, first game, layout 6, Purge the foe. So the first day was all layout 6 games because we're preparing for Nova, so which is layout 6 for. And anybody, if you don't know familiar with layout 6, it's a wide open, like the entire middle is just wide open. It's a shooting spree, and the center objective, there's nothing to hide from. Like it's right there out in the middle of nowhere, so it's pretty fun. Second opponent was Mark with the Tyranids. That was supply drop. Then I had Marcus. That was my first Death Guard opponent. Take and hold and tipping point. Then I had Frank, Linchpin, Search and Destroy with Imperial Knights. And then my final one was Terraform Crucible Battle with Will and his Death Guard. So we'll just kind of jump in. Chris with Eldar. Um, take a look at score, really. I remember we kept this really close. I think Chris really started to quickly respect like the firepower of the repulsor executioners because he's playing Eldar, so he can't afford to like be seen at all by any of my stuff. Otherwise, I blow in his direction and his units just kind of evaporate. And so I think he
All those
focused.
Rip E guns are really good against Eldar.
This, yeah, yeah, and he had I think it was a total of 30 fire dragons, 10 with a Fuelgen is his name, one of those characters that made him really. And it was in strategic reserve. And then he had some more in a transport, one of the serpents tanks. I'm terrible with the names of units from other armies, by the way. Um, so he had some stuff that could really take down my repulsor executioners. But early game, he was going after the ballista shreds, and that was like, okay, I'm okay with that. In fact, I think what really cost him early on was that he strategically reserved the 10 and the character, and then he had split fire, like 3 into 1 ballista shred and the rest in the other. And the bulk of them were going into a ballista shred that was on the objective, kind of in the corner of a ruin. And I decided just, okay, I'm armor contempt that one because you're split fire, and I'm like doing the math in my head. I was like, oh, both of these ballista shreds will probably survive this, and sure enough, that's exactly what happened. They both survived that because of that split fire. So I think that was a big mistake on his part. Um, so yeah, split fire. What else did he do? He really just kind of started to try to focus on pockets and pick at it, like kind of punch through a pocket, and that didn't work out, so he punched through another pocket. And I think he just wasn't aggressive. He was too aggressive early on, and then he wasn't aggressive enough when he needed to be, and then he had a really bad go turn. And in his go turn, I told him later, I said, I think he needed to engage a serpent sooner with the other fire dragons, or work them together. But the other thing too is I'm actually terrified of banshees sometimes. Because they can really mess up some units if you're not careful. And he just kept his banshees back the entire time. And so I think he just fed a little, just kind of fed us too slowly, and his go turn went really, really poorly. For my part, it wasn't perfect either. I threw away my JPIs for no reason. I was trying to figure what I was even trying to do. I was trying to go after something to be cute, and I just lost in the very first turn. And then I believe I exposed my Callidus assassins just needlessly, and I lost it really early on. So I hadn't played since ACO, not necessarily a new list, but I'm like, I gotta dust the cobwebs off here and not lose units to something silly. So those are the big mistakes. And then finally, what really kind of helped me, unfortunately, I don't like this feeling, but he did clock himself. We were on chess clock, and he kind of got an analysis paralysis a little bit, and it started costing him some time. And he did clock himself, but he played really, really well. End of 83-64. It was actually really close. Um, I was in the lead for the first 2 turns, and he got closer towards turn 3 and actually took turn 4 by 2 points. But then at the end of turn 4, he just lost to steam. He just out of units, and I was able to overwhelm him and go 83-64 at the end. So that was turn 1. Any questions on the Eldar? Because I know that's kind of a tough matchup for people sometimes.
I've never really had too terribly much problem with Eldar itself. Just the way how I build my list. I feel like most of the players traditionally, or at least Black Templars players, build larger blocks, or they're more durable things, and that's just a recipe for disaster with uh, uh, an army that really rewards trading up. So when we run MSU, I think it's a big counter for them because a our stuff is a little bit more durable, has a little bit more quality on some of those things, and if you put them in the right spots. And so I think like your list, the way it was built, is is a great counter to simply playing the Eldar or something like Drukari, something that's fragile and fast moving, because they don't have enough steam over the course of the game because it's not enough quality. So I, at least personally, looking at your list, I can see that looking in that, hey, you got quality units here. This is what you need to do. Just play a little bit cagey and come out for your go turn when it's time to do that, and then you can take over control of the game real quick.
Yeah, you hit it on the head there. The game flow for grand tournaments, especially at a high level, doesn't change too much, which is your first early parts of the game are just positioning and then skirmishes. Little fights break out here. And with Eldar, they can't fight the skirmishes just as well as you can. Like they can on if they've got the initiative and the offensive firepower they catch you. But for the most part, if they play that coy game, you're right. You actually punch up on all their skirmishes. So then they lose the skirmish game and they lose their trash units. they can't score as fast, and then their go turn, which can be really important. They they lose a little bit of agency because you're going against T12 stuff and stuff with 2-up saves. It takes a lot of their firepower out of their control, but everything trades up in this in an MSU list, and I think that's why it plays really well to Eldar. You just have to be patient. I think that's the other thing too, because they can punish you if you feel like, oh, I can punch up on everything and just shove things forward. They'll punish you soundly for doing that.
Yeah,
And I think that's
something
a
I've learned.
recipe.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say something I've learned, against Eldar is they're they're really deadly, but they fold very easily. So you gotta either weather that or trade into them. Stuff like, which, again, come back to Gladius, fights on death. They don't like fights on death because, like a unit like Banshees survives because they kill you before you can kill them. Well, if you fight on death back, then it's mutually assured destruction. So they're gonna kill your unit, but you're gonna kill them back, and now they've got no unit left, right? And that's not how Eldar wants to play.
Yeah. Moving on to the NIDS list, that was Mark. Like I said, he's a good friend of mine. We hang out quite a bit. He's one of the first people that really kind of pushed me to the level. I like to blame my competitiveness and how high I've gone to him. I was like, listen, you made me a monster. So he'll enjoy that comment. But he's been a career Tyranids player as well. Has a gorgeous series of armies, but his Tyranids army especially is really, really gorgeous. And every time I play him, I'll play a lot of NIDS players, and I actually never worry. Like I feel like I comfortably swim through NIDS games, but not Mark. Mark always finds a way to stay in this game, and he was in the lead for the entire game. It came down to the last round. In fact, he played me really hard, and what ended up happening is I noticed that he was shifting towards my farthest objective away from me, towards him, farthest away from me, and he was shifting most of his army. And in fact, I had he had moved everything over there, and he had zoanthropes with the neuro character that goes with them that has a dangerous flamer. He had exocrines in strategic reserve, and he had a tyrant as well. And I think I had actually like literally like was going to tie my shoe or grab something from my tray or a drink, and I get back up and he had strategically reserved, or not strategic reserve, he had moved from reserves on his movement phase. The neurothropes, the exocrine, as well as his character had moved up. Like all this stuff, like his bulk of his army, almost all of it was just sitting there on the edge of the board. Meanwhile, he had just like lictors holding the rest of the board down. I'm like, okay, I'm okay with losing this game until round 5. And so what I did was I concentrated everything, including all my brain power, to really dismantle that side of the board in a way that would leave me with quite a few units left where I can also still play around with primary, score all my secondaries, but stay in the game, and so that I will eventually table most of his important pieces and then take over on round 4 and 5. And it worked. The plan had worked soundly. Some of my notes I talked about is it had worked soundly until my go turn where I was shoving in a Sword Brethren units. He moved in Raveners, and I also had the Emperor's Champion in that Zoanthrope group with the Tyrant or the character, as well as the Tyrant and the Exocrine. So I shoved those guys in there, and I don't quite kill them. I forget why the Raveners were on the Sword Brethren and survived. I don't know if why they were in engagement. I kind of lost on that right now. But what happened was on my turn, his turn, he does all this and he completely whiffs. He has a terrible, terrible go turn. But he does enough to get the Emperor's Champion down to I think 3 wounds, and the Sword Brethren to 2 models, and the characters left. So he'd done just enough, but he really kind of whiffed on his go turn. And then on my turn, he did Shadow of the Warp. And the running joke with me and Mark is last time I was in this grand tournament, not the last time I played, actually the last time I played him in the same grand tournament, which was over a year ago, Shadow of the Warp cost me the game. And I'm like, oh God, this is going to cost me the game. And sure enough, I passed all, and I'm going counterclockwise, starting where the positions I don't really care about the most, just kind of like waiting for the inevitable. And I get to those units on the far side of the board and fail the Sword Brother and failed the Emperor's Champion. and I have tactical doctrine left. So I have tactical doctrine left, but I still have to roll for these. So I actually, on the clock, I probably spent 10 minutes planning out turn 4 in my head, weighing which one do I want to lose, potentially lose. Like, how am I going to do this? And which one am I going to gamble on? So I'm sitting there for 10 minutes thinking this through. And then when I finally do it, I said, there's nothing to it. Emperor's Champion, roll 4. Good. That's all I care about. Sword Brother can just sit there. Or Tactical Doctrine, he comes in, cleaves off the Raveners. Sword Brethren clean up the Xenothrapes. We pile into the Exocrine. I clean up the rest of the board, and that was pretty much the game. It just kind of collapsed at that, and I ended up 79 to 55 on that one. So had a huge 25 point fifth turn, and he was tabled, so he had 0 points. So the pendulum just absolutely swung against him. Great guy. If you're seeing this, Mark, I love you.
Yeah, Nids are actually a matchup that are pretty tough nowadays for us. So yeah, that's an awesome win. So I'm a little bit surprised that you weren't having to deal with some of those holes that pop up all over the board. So that's a very common list. Um, but
Like the Molochs or the.
yeah, the Molochs,
Oh
yeah,
no,
deep
he
striking six
no he
inches.
didn't use the Molochs. He actually what he used was I feel bad because everybody thinks they're really tough, but they're the what are the norm emissary. Like everybody's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna plop this down. It's 2 up, 4 up, 4 up if I'm on objective or something like that. It's like okay, 16 wounds. So I need to do how much damage? Okay, I'll do that much damage. So I've never truly worried about them, and that was one I think his early mistakes. He had a norm going after a furthest away objective. He declared that as his 15 OC objective for this one norm, and he decided to walk it up the board. And I don't think he respected my shooting enough. And I'm like, I got him down to 8 wounds on turn 1, and by the time he did get over there, yeah, I was able to clean him up rather soundly. And then the other norm, I absolutely obliterated. I think the Sword Brethren absolutely chewed him up when I because he just sat it there, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna ignore that one, focus on the rest of your army, and then when it's time for me to kill that guy, he's gonna be super dead, and that's exactly what happened.
I had the Emperor's Champion kill a Norn emissary once. That was freaking hilarious. He failed every save, and I'm like, okay, they're 4 damage each.
Yeah.
So it's like, all right. He's like, he's dead. I was like, great. I'm gonna
Yeah.
write that one down for amazing kill.
And I'll tell you
Add it to his tally.
that's a good segue into what I want to talk about. The end of this game that I realized it kind of clicked on me as an aha moment, as a probably the MVP of my list, which is the Emperor's Champion with Artifice Armor, because after I killed that Exocrine, I'm close enough to his objective. I decided to start really putting the pressure on making him lose this game by getting that thing onto the objective as fast as I can. There was actually a character, I believe, on that objective with a Biovore and another Exocrine. So I just shoved him in there, killed the character off, and he just stayed there for the rest of the game. And then after that game, I realized, okay, this guy, I'm sitting there in the tank and then trying to strategically get him out to try to charge something important, or maybe Toad objective and just and dare people. But this guy's an awesome missile. Like I'm just gonna yeet him up the board and say, deal with it. Because I used to just use the Grav Captain with Artifice Armor and say, come at me, bro, on an objective, or just sick him out in the open on deployment for a guard player and like expose all your Rogaldorns, I dare ya. But this guy, I found out like he is ultra durable and dangerous offensively. And so going into Death Guard, which was my third one, I just kept that in mind. Said I'm going to be more aggressive with my Emperor's Champion. And so my next game was Marcus, who's actually a team member of mine with Death Guard. Really great guy. Played really smart Death Guard. He had Typhus with one unit of the Shroud, and he had I forget the other character. It's Lord maybe or something or other. The good one that's really good with the Shroud. He had the other ones with the second unit. He had a character of those, but then he was running typical all the drones and 3 of the indirect. And my first mistake right out of the gate was having Sword Brethren on foot. Like, oh, that was the other thing I adjusted too. I decided the Emperor's Champion is going to start getting yeeted forward, and then Sasha had made the suggestion of keeping the Sword Brother in a tank and strategic reserve. I'm like, yeah, that's a great idea because then I can rapid ingress and gain some mobility and on the if I want to charge on the Sword Brother as well as move the tank with them. So I decided to do that. And so right out of the gate, what he does is he deploys his character that is a force multiplier that is protected by he's got blown up as long as he's 3 inches away from vehicles or monsters, I think it is. He puts this thing right on the line, but the two vehicles are also like fully exposed. And I'm sitting there like, is he trying to tempt me here? What's going on here? I felt like it was a trap, but I was like doing the math over and over in my head. I was like, no, I think I can break his back on the first turn. And sure enough, like I get first turn, he can't do anything about this. So I start shooting at those drones, and I think I killed one and got one wounded. I didn't quite pull it off, but just the threat of that all of a sudden like kind of unnerved him. Like, oh, I don't know why I did that. And it's like he said, I didn't realize like how good your shooting can be. And I think then he grew to respect my shooting. And then it turned into a pretty close game where we kind of going back and forth. We both stayed on 10 on primary throughout for the most part. He actually kept in the lead until turn 3. And turn 3, what happened was, here's why I don't always worry about Death Guard as much, is because they, despite them being like they have incredible data sheets, and in the hands of a great player, yeah, they can definitely roll right through you. But there is a sense of, I think that they think they have agency on everything because their data sheets are just so good. But and then Shroud specifically, they think, okay, 6 inch deep strike and I can still charge. That's awesome. Like that's such a great tool. I'll do that every single time. But rolling a 6 or more isn't always guaranteed, and that's where you lose that agency. And I think that people are like they I don't know if they just quite understand that if you bring two of the shrouds out at the same time, there's a chance that you fail to charge on one of those, and it's a pretty good chance actually. And sure enough, the Typhus, for one, blew himself up. So that was great on my part. He tried to do his mind bullets and failed twice and blew himself up. So that Death Shroud was a lot weaker, and I was able to kill him on Fight on Death. And then the other ones, the most dangerous one on turn 3 comes in. I saved 2 CP for this moment because I know they're coming in and they're going to destroy a Sword Brother unit and then pile into a Repulsor Executioner and take my tempting target. So he's going to kill 2 units potentially, or at least lock up the repulsor executioner and take the objective for tempting target, like that could be the game. He rolls a 2, and the CP rolls it into a 3. And I've got 2 CP. It's about to be my turn going to 3 CP, and those Death Shroud are just sitting out in the open. So shoot him off the board. That's when the game starts to really collapses on him. He had one final like hoorah towards the end there where he wanted to take my objective with a drone, yeeted it across the center from the center of the board into my objective, which only had like an outrider on it. It could have gained him some points, denied me some primaries, and kept him in the game. That's when I overwatched with the repulsor executioner, threw 2 6s out on big guns, and that thing blew up in the middle of the air. I shot him out like out of the air like this. So that really, I think that broke his back there, and I ended up winning 82 to 67. But with Death Shroud in general, you've got to respect their data sheets. They do what they want offensively. They're extremely dangerous. So I think what the key is what I learned, especially after Atlantic City, is that I needed to be a lot more patient and look for the key opportunities to take out important units in a way that I will not lose an important unit on the clapback. So that's kind of the key for me with Death Guard, because even in Atlantic City, the things that I made mistakes on was, okay, I missed an opportunity. I remember missing a plasma interceptors trying to take out a rhino would have been a great opportunity to take out those plague marines. But then also I was trying to take opportunities without thinking about his clapback enough. And so going into this tournament, I was thinking through that. In fact, I had joked. I actually spent 40 minutes on the first 2 rounds because at the top of round 3, I'm like, I only have 31 minutes left. He's like, yeah, you spent 40 minutes on those 2 rounds. And if you saw it on count on it on camera, I'm doing this for like 15 minutes, and I'm running the whole round. I'm going to do this, then he's going to do this. I'm going to do this. So I'm running the whole round in my head, and then the round takes 5 minutes, and I did it again on round 2. So I think that slowing myself down and being patient to thinking through those clapback moments really helped me solidify, staying competitive with Death Guard. They're not easy, so I don't want anybody to think that you're gonna roll through them or I roll through them. But it kept me competitive and kept me in the game.
Yeah, to your point about charges, so a 6-inch charge is a 72% chance, which way better than average. It's high. It's also almost a 30% chance to fail.
Yeah.
So, like you said, it's the chances are good they're gonna make it, but it's not guaranteed. And even if they CP reroll into the charge, they've now had to burn a CP on a
Yeah.
something they probably didn't really want to burn CP on. So,
Yeah. And you're bringing 2 units, so you're trying for that opportunity twice, and across 5 games, you are going to lose that. So if you're a Death Guard player, you just have to understand you have to pick your targets closely, because you have to imagine what happens if I fail this. Like, what will this unit do? Where will this unit be? And I think if I was him, I would try to put him behind a wall at the very least, or somewhere where if you fail the charge, you don't have to go the full 6. Maybe go 7 because you're behind a wall, and then fail a 7-inch charge instead of failing a 6 and being stuck out in the middle of the open. I think that's where his mistake was.
and would you suggest like against that, trying to feed them like an inexpensive unit like intercessors or something like that?
Um, like intercept. I don't think I don't. They trade really well too. And when I think about it, what I try to do is take out their poxwalkers pretty quickly. Yeah, I find myself trying to do what I can to take out the poxwalkers. So I'll use my JPIs even to try to take those things out and remove them, because if you take out their poxwalkers, then then they have to start doing things like cleanse with drones, and they don't want to do that. They want to be able to use poxwalkers to cleanse while the drones are doing what they're supposed to be doing. So I found myself trying to take out their Death Guard's trash almost any way I can first, and then just being really patient. They'll stick out those drones, because remember, they need you to also be in contagion range. So, and it does expand over time. So they actually want to get close, which is in your favor. So if you're patient and watch them come out, you can start taking pot shots and start, soften up some drones. The repulsor might be lucky and just take out a drone altogether, and just start picking those things off. And in your mind, or at least in my mind, I'm also saving CP up, because I want to wait until the shrouds are down. Once the shrouds come down, I think that's when the game starts to get, dictated. Either they rapid aggress them as soon as turn 2, or they're down by 3. They're going to be down by 3, period. So by then, I've saved all my CP. The shroud, I've seen where the shrouds are going to go. I'm going to be able to fight on death. At the very least, I know I'm going to kill the shrouds once they do their thing or fail to do their thing, and then I can finish off the rest of the drones, and then make sure that my units stay inside the tanks, because those indirect is pretty nasty from those
Yeah,
3 plague burst crawlers. That's what those are.
Yeah, those things are
awesome.
annoying.
Uh, Imperial Knights, Frank. He's out of a team out of Maryland. I've seen him quite a few times. Frank is an incredible player, and a great guy as well. I had an absolute blast with Frank. We always chatted up. He's very chatty in the best way possible. But he was playing Imperial Knights. I was thinking about this earlier. I'm gonna think about it real quick before I say it, but I don't think I've ever lost against Imperial Knights in a grand tournament or in an RTT yet. I think that's part of the reason why is that's my super secret other army.
Hopefully, hopefully not famous last words.
Yeah, famous last words here. Last time I did lose to Knights is because I was bringing Knights actually, and it was against a career Knights player who'd been doing for 20 years, and he taught me a lot about Knights. Like, so that's how I got lucky with Knights. It's very early on. Met a really great Knights player from Canada who absolutely demolished me and used some of the coolest tactics for Knights. I fell in love with the army, and also there was another player who was just throwing a fit. That Knights were terrible, and I was like, no, your army is really great. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna build a Knights army. And I've actually played about 32 or 34 games with Knights, and I've probably lost like 4 times. It's a very, very powerful army. So unfortunately for Frank, I think I knew his army better than he knew his army. So he's running a triple Atropos, Canis Rex, 4 Helrons, no assassins, no trash. And we're running Lynchpin. I was like, that's my match right there. And it's search and destroy. That's my match. I love search and destroy. I love linchpin, because especially if they don't have trash, because they have to keep something back there. And he kept in a Trapos back there. But the thing, I really, really like Frank, but his big mistake right at turn 1, he goes first. He can't shoot anything, and he draws cleanse. and he thinks, I guess, that as a Trapos going into the center and getting cleansed for 3 points is going to be super safe. And I was just right there. I thought that the game was going to be mine to lose at that point. So I do my thing. I get out there. I peel off 10 wounds with shooting. It was interesting. This came up throughout, and it's a very, very important detail about Nice when you especially have really good shooting. You actually don't want to blow them off the board in shooting. Because that can mess up with if you get your sword brethren out to do the charge and you accidentally blow them up, and you've got sword brethren just standing out
Just
there,
standing there,
just standing there. So there was
standing there with their power swords in their hands.
yes. So I found
Is that
myself
what you
like
call it?
stopping my shooting twice actually against the first Atropos and then the Canis Rex. Actually, Canis I got down to I think 11 wounds on shooting when he was out in the center. So he was unfortunately feeding me big knights into the center with having an Atropos that was stuck on his objective. And what was cool about that is a Trapos stuck on a home objective means I only have to deal with a half a knight. I don't have to deal with melee. I just have to deal with his shooting. He has some really good shooting on, I think, round 2. I was in the lead round 1 and 2. He came into round 3 because he had a really good round 2 of shooting, I think it was. But then his dice decided to start betraying him, and I had really good shooting. We tied on round 4, and then but by the time round 5 came around, I pretty much had tabled him. He was down to one baby knight. Actually, um, I damn near tabled him, but it's tied in 4, and I have bottom scoring. He goes up to 67, so it's 56 to 56. He scores 8 points on primary, and the only thing he can do on secondaries is recover for 3 points with what's left on the board. So he scores 11, he's up to 67. I need to score 13. I forget what it was. It was closer than how I'm speaking this out loud now. And I'm reading the scoreboard here. But what ended up happening was what I needed to do was take him off primary completely. So I think I was going first. He was going second. That's exactly what was happening. So he's going to have bottom 2 scoring. I control my home objective. Emperor's Champion is holding down the furthest objectives that he cannot get to, so I'm fine with that. He has access to the other 2 objectives in the center. And so what I do is I think I just tie up the last Hellrun with an Emperor's Champion so he just couldn't move or advance or something like that. And he just didn't have enough pieces and ended up losing on the last round, 78 to 67. But just again, just being patient and making them make the mistake and then softening up about shooting and then getting them into melee to clean up the Atrapos. That's where Sword Brother really started to shine. Just picking up all those dice and saying, I just need to fish for 5 essentially 3 times. He was making he had to make 17 saves once, 22 saves once, 24 saves once, and no amount of 6-up Feel No Pains are going to save you from that much damage melee. And they just absolutely folded. And one time it got really dangerous. He saved some CP on Fight on Death. But even on that, my Sword Brothers somehow pulled out, and I lived with like 1 model left, so I got a miracle save on that one. But yeah, that was Knights in a nutshell there.
It's because they're sword brethren.
Yeah, Sword
It's what they
Brothers.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough matchup for us on that one for sure. They're just pointed too well for us to handle in a lot of matchups. But again, the MSU really helps us, I think, on that because then they have to waste all their shots on the piddly unit. We still have too many tools for them to do. And the way you're speaking about it, it's a recurring theme. I think is something that a lot of Black Templars players don't really see or do well in general is learning when to be aggressive. And it's always straight out. It's like, I'm just going to break out. I'm going to get to the center as fast as humanly possible. I'm going to go for their home objective. Like, you just can't do it in this day and age. We're not playing 100 Crusaders that can survive 5 turns right out in the open. It's just, we're not doing it. You can't survive like that. You have to use your pieces successfully. You have to make the right trades at the right time, and you're kind of speaking to that right now. So I
Yeah,
got to give you a lot of props for that.
yeah, you're right. I've also never lost to Black Templar players except for Sasha, and here's the reason why. Almost every single one of them does exactly what you said there. Stop doing this, guys. They all
Yeah.
move into the pockets. They move into the pockets. They move into the center. They position. That's it. Okay. That's great. That's really really great. And then it's like a World Eaters player, and then it's like then they just kind of like they might as well go on a log turn and just kind of push all out. It's like you got to deal with the whole army now. It's like okay, I'm gonna treat you like a World Eaters player then. I'm just gonna create a half moon screen and I've always played against Black Templars the same way. I create a screen because they're inevitably going to want to chomp on the bit to come after my whole army, and then they inevitably always do that. So got to be more strategic. And yeah, MSU. One of the things that if you want to imagine how MSU is to be played, is imagine playing a really team-based, tight-knit first-person shooter like Rainbow Six. That's mission-based. You've got a small, super elite group, and they're supposed to do something super, super specific, and they have their specific tasks that they're doing. For example, this Knights player, my scouts. My scouts were the intention of my scouts was this: put them in the pocket right in the center there, search and destroy, and you got that L, and you have that wall, so you could keep them right there in that pocket near the center, denying aerial denial at least big, but furthermore an inch of the way so they can also not charge them. And since he went first and ignored those scouts and put that Atropos on there and cleanse, on my turn, that elite unit's next job is to go die in the best way possible. I advanced them forward and created like a zigzag screen in front of the big building, in front of the rest of the center and the furthest expansion. And what I did was I pre-measured the back of the bases on all his knights. I would look over his side of the table. I said, where can your knights go if they go through the wall? And I basically screened in a zigzag the entire area. So he had to go the opposite direction away from the whole battle if he wanted to move. Otherwise, he had to deal with the scouts on his turn before he could even move. So move block with one little elite unit that had their little job there. Those are the little things you have to think about as you're working with an MSU unit and how you're going to use them strategically like that. Should we go to the final round?
Yeah.
This was Will. This is Frank's buddy. Another really great player. Very friendly. He was playing Death Guard again. So I was trying to think through what I did well and my prior Death Guard matches, what I was learning, um, and wanted to apply that. And so what I wanted to do is, since I knew this was gonna be a tough match, and he's gone 4-0 as well at this point, so I've got to respect that he knows what he's doing with his army. My goal was this is to try to keep it as close as possible, and again do the same thing: save CP. Don't use it on anything defensively. Don't use it too much on anything reactively, unless it's super important. Save my CP for when he brings the shrouds down, and see what I can pick off. So that was my mentality going in. As we're going through the deployment, he starts making some of the same mistakes as the last Death Guard player. He puts 2 drones out in the open on one far side, and another drone out in the 2 other drones outside the open on the other side, and then the Melta ones. Well, the hover ones are on the far side. The 2 Melta ones are on the other side, and I'm like, I gotta get rid of those Melta ones. Those are the worst ones because they can go AP5 and eat right through a repulsor executioner. So he does some of the same mistakes, and so I use my ballistic threads, specifically my ballistic threads, to not only get into some strategic positions, including I think towing one objective, I believe, or getting out in a position where I'm close to an objective, but also getting this other one out into some ruins, so it's still in cover but still can shoot, and start popping off these drones. And I pop off one drone, and so I've already got the initiative on shooting down drones, and that's always kind of my thing. I want to shoot down drones as fast as possible and see what I can do before the shrouds come in. So he gives me the initiative, and so through his deployment, I was like, I think I'm going to have this because of the way he's deployed. He's a little bit too aggressive. I don't think he's respecting my shooting, and so that's what ended up happening. And we actually stayed tied on primary for the most part, but again, the value of MSU, he couldn't score on all the cards. I found him scoring 0 on secondaries on the first turn, only 3 on a second turn. He couldn't do sabotage. He tried to do sabotage with Poxwalkers. And so what did I do? I popped the Poxwalkers. So he had to keep that on round 2. And then he had overwhelming force, and he only was able to score 3 on that because at that point I only had something within arm's reach, only one thing within arm's reach for him. He catched up on secondaries for the rest of the round, so he did really well in that one too. But I think the key mistake he made, we just talked about earlier on the call with the Outriders, is that he decided to deploy the Death Shroud into my deployment zone. I already mentioned this. Sword Brother come out, clean up, get back in. They're ready for the next Shroud. The next Shroud was his other mistake. I had an objective that I could care less about. It had a battle shocked drone on it. I could focus on the rest of the army everywhere else, and he decided to drop the Death Shroud there. But I still took the bait because I realized I can still clear that up. I can clean those Shroud up, and then I can rest easy and try to cruise through the rest of this game and just focus on scoring. That's exactly what I did. Where I did get unlucky is his character survived. So I think it gets back up on us 2 up. So it came back up there. So I had to do I had to take one other round to get rid of the character there. But I had a repulsor executioner go all the way to his home objective, by the way. So by the end of the game, I had a repulsor execute. What won me the game was Sasha. So I have a scout that I got from Sasha. It's got a chainsword that he had painted years and years ago that he just gave me to use, and I've always been using. He's won me a grand tournament a tournament once before, and he won me this tournament. So we're going into. So let's look at the score here. We're into round 4. At the end of round 4, it's 54-50 me. He's going second. So anybody knows on Terraform or anything where you get points from taking objectives, you going second is an advantage for you. So I know what I need to do is ensure that he can do as little as possible to get onto 3 objectives. If I can keep them to at least 1, no more than 2, I'm probably going to win the game still. So even though I felt comfortable about winning, there was a chance. Like there was actually I was doing the math. There's a chance he could actually take this game depending on what he draws on secondaries. If he scores, especially if he scores 9. So I need to keep him to 8 on primary. So I'm sitting there. What do I have left? I have got the Emperor's Champion hold down the fort on an objective. He's nowhere near anything. I've got Sword Brethren that are still in my objective from after clearing up the shroud. They are moved up a little bit behind the wall, moving in the direction of the center objective. The Repulsor Executioner does move and take the home objective, which is great because it takes linchpin as terraform. So I don't think he's going to get anything for that. So it's 5OC. I take care of that, and he has nothing they can go back there for. So he's got the furthest objective from me with a drone that has 4 wounds left. There's the character, that force multiplier that's protected by vehicles, and then he's got a plague burst crawler with 2 wounds on it left. And so I'm saying, oh, how do I ensure that he cannot take this? And I've got one JPI model that's in his objective. So I thought, I'm going to grenade that drone with 4 wounds. And so his thought process is, and I know he's got a flamer. He's like, he says, I've got a flamer, so just be aware. And I do my battle shocks. Battle shock here, including on the scout. He forgets the scout's even there. So I'm thinking about my turn 5 minutes later. I'm like, and I've got plenty of. I've got 12 minutes, so I'm gonna really think through this last turn here. So I plop the JPI out. He overwatches. I'm like, that's fine. I'm just gonna pick up the model. Scout comes out. Sasha comes out, gets onto the objective, um, and that's my tempting target, by the way. Gets on the objective, tosses a grenade. I need 4 4-ups. 4 4-ups show up. Blows up the blow drone, kills that off. I get my tempting target for 5. I take off another model that he takes off. There's no way he can catch up on primary. The best he can possibly do is 8. He draws the secondaries. The best he can possibly do is 9. He can do 17 for the turn. I'll still win 72-67. I said, listen, I'll just give you max points. And he's like, that's fair. And I give him max points. I said, you do this, this, and this. I'm not going to fight you on it. You get your 67. I'll get my 72, and we'll call it a game. So patience and MSU and being really thinking through my turns really helped me on that one.
I
Nice.
need
That's
to
awesome.
kind of mention it because you've talked a lot about making sure that you think through your games. That only works if you're efficient with the rest of your turn and actually implementing it. So as an average player, when you're going into a tournament and you're on a chess clock, don't sit there and think about your turn unless you can get through the turn fast enough to make it count. So
Yeah,
I think
please.
that's
Yeah.
something that's important to note.
Great bring up, especially with repulsor executioners, because I tell you what, if I see a repulsor executioner, even if you have 1, I'm whirlwind slamming that chest clock down because he's got like all these data sheets that you have to roll through. So You have to be very efficient with your turn. So yes, Bob, it's a good bring up. I will tell you one of the first lessons I ever learned playing Warhammer at a competitive level was a friend named Robbie. He got me really early on. I was just getting ready for my first grand tournament where I was actually going to learn how to play Warhammer. And what he did is he said, I had all my cards out, my data sheets. He said, no, put them down. Play with what you know. I'm like, oh shit, I don't know anything. So he's like, no. And so I got into the practice of memorizing it. You really needed the repetition. He said, and then so he did. He sent me home. He's like, go roll dice while you're watching YouTube. Like, what are you, your sword brethren are going into a night. What are you going to roll? Start practicing. What are the data sheets? Practice, practice, practice. Make it so that stuff is second nature, so that you're not looking up things. Even I struggle with looking up things that are on new codex, so double checking my work. But yeah, you thinking through those turns is important, but if you can't get through the actual turn in 5 minutes, don't try to sit there for 15 minutes and, and waste all that time.
Yeah. Yeah, the repulsor executioner is like, okay, and I'm gonna shoot with this. Bring out the book of armaments. Hold
Yeah,
on. It
yeah,
says here you must, cast the holy hand grenade on a count of 3.
yeah.
So
There's a handful of
And that's actually
401s, and like 3 of them are actually twin links. So you got to throw those ones separately. So
right, right, exactly.
and it's actually a good call out on the repulsor executioner on that. For again the average Black Templars player that's going to be rolling up with their new Rep X. Are
That's
are
gonna be
are there any
me.
opportunities
I'm
that
gonna be like, what does this thing have? Because I don't know. Because I've never
did you
used it.
find that you were in a position, well, as a more experienced player that's probably not going to be as applicable, but did you find that you were just not shooting some of those things because you simply didn't need it and wanted to save yourself time?
yes. In fact, late game, the repulsor executioner's role changes. And so, great question, because I think it leads to one of the other questions that somebody asked me in the channel. When I asked, hey, what do you want to ask? Somebody asked, Algoris, I think his name is, asked about the role of transports. Did you only use the repulsor executioner? What unit? Did the repulsor executioner transport capacity play a role in your gameplay, and how did you use the Outriders tag? uh, um, so, um, so I think I'm going to address his question there as well as yours. Did the repulsor X's transport capacity play a role in your game plan? So yes, there are moments where you don't need to shoot that, and also just shoot the big gun. Why waste the shots on the 401s? I'm just going to shoot anything with AP, and I would say that to a player. Anything with AP is just going into this guy and my Dev 1 gun. That's it. I don't care about the 401s. But late game, especially into turn 4 and 5, what I was using repulsor executioners for, especially if they survived, was strategically and placing them as close to my sword brethren as possible. Because here's the one of the coolest things about Gladys Task Force is the reactive movement. And being able to, oh, you move within 9 inches, I'm getting back in my repulsor. Or you move outside of engagement. That came up twice actually. I was kind of Sasha and I were kind of we were poo pooing on this codex all weekend about certain aspects of the codex and why we thought the design choices were really weird. And we were even like joking about the sword brother. When will this ever come up? And it turns out it comes up a little bit more often than we thought, where they jump out of engagement and I make a normal movement. I'm back in my tank. It also stacks with a tactical doctrine stratagem. So you can, extend your movement as much. So you can do all sorts of movement shenanigans. And so the repulsor execution goes from being a offensive threat to being a box where I can keep these sword brethren safe for late turn 4 and turn 5. Especially against Death Guard with Plague Bursters, they can take out your entire sword brethren unit in one activation or one phase, because all they need to do is chew through 12 wounds and the unit breaks, because then you just have those 2 characters and who cares then. So I learned that really early on. So having them in the tanks, and I also would keep the impulsor as close to the center as possible. This came up again, why it was so important, because Frank, I will actually tell you, he admitted this too. He had a way of winning the game because I failed a 4-inch charge. I have a picture of this I'll have to share. I failed a 4-inch charge. The eyes, like, I swear the lips of the bases were 4 inches away. But we called a judge over, and I was like, we're going to go with the judge's decision. Judge says it's not. It's just outside of 4, so I didn't get it. So I've got a Trapos staring at my sword brethren. and they're right next to an impulsor, which is right next to a wall. So I'll put the impulsor next to the wall for this exact same reason. So I sit there silently like this. We've talked about my reactive movements all throughout. He's even joking that he hates them. Everyone, he's like, "Oh, you got the Eldritch reactive movement." Even as he's going through his movement phase, he's like, "Oh, I got to respect your reactive movement." For some reason, that 4-inch away Atrapos, he decided to move up 2 more inches to guarantee the charge. So what do? Move him back into the impulsor. He charges the impulsor. They dump out 1 inch outside of the wall on the other side, so they can't be within engagement range. So he blows up the impulsor, and guess what? He gets me back into the game because all he did was kill an impulsor. He got what he needed in terms of the center objective stuff. But I have Sword Brothers waiting behind waiting behind a wall against an Atrapos who's already down to like 18 wounds. Guess what happens next? It's a wrap.
Okay, so let's talk about the thing that you mentioned a little bit ago about in the beginning of this video, actually, about the Callidus assassins, but you haven't really touched on her. Why is she in the list? Is this just a holdover? Is there actually some strategic piece of your puzzle?
Sure. No, she's back in the list because Callous Assassin is extremely good for melee support for the Vect. Now she was in my list prior for quite some time, and I got bullied by Sasha and a few other coaches to get it out of the list because it's just as a crutch. Because what you end up doing, and what a lot of people end up doing, is just using her to bounce around, score points, and that's it. They don't leverage the Vect very well, or they don't need to. So I got it out of the list, but then I actually created 3 lists for this grand tournament, which one included this character in there, but I didn't want to tell Sasha. But then we were actually talking about the list, and he's like, "What do you think about putting a Callous Assassin in there?" I'm like, "Hot damn, we're putting a Callous Assassin in there." I explained to him that I was actually excited about bringing her back into this list, and here's the reason why: as a Callous Assassin, when you are in a melee army, the thing that you don't want to have to deal with is fight on death or fights first or some stratagem that can prevent you from killing and surviving. So saving your CP and then more importantly, being defensive with CP with Vect can be very, very critical. And also against Imperial Knights because their number one stratagem they love to use in shooting every single time without a doubt is rotate ion shields. And so even in the early game with that Atrapos in the center, I knew he was going to rotate ion shields. He had 3 CP on my turn because one for his turn, he discarded and had his third. I need to get CP down, so bring Callus down. I got 2 CP out of him for rotate ion shields. I'll take that any time. So milking that CP out of the opponent with Vex is also very, very powerful with a Callus Assassin. So yes, it's nice that she could score. She did kill Tallyman against Will on the last round. That was kind of cool, but for the most part, Vect is extremely powerful support character for Sword Brethren.
All right, so you kind of touched on it a little bit earlier. So I know there's some other questions that I think you're going to get to that were on the Discord, but so I know that you are running your Emperor solo. You kind of touched on that. You kind of have him ride shotgun with some of the sword bros in your Rep X on that. So since he's riding shotgun, why do you give him the artificial armor over something like the Honor of Vehement?
Well, so I run him solo, not attached to anything. I was tempted to attach him
Yep.
to Assault Intercessor, so I just want to make sure, okay, we're on the same page on that. So, first round, and I think the second round, I did keep him shotgun in a tank, and my idea was, okay, I get, jump him out 3 inches and move him another 8 and then be able to advance and charge. I wanted to send him like a missile towards something. That was kind of my idea. Maybe I can use him as a missile. Or, just like the Grav Captain, send him on objective and, send him on an objective and just play kind of come at me, bro. The Artifice armor, and so I was using Honor Vehement on the captain already because I wanted the extra attacks. So that was important. We already talked about that. That's a drop from my list. So maybe it goes into a question of do I put that on a Marshal or do I put that on the Emperor's Champion? I still, based on my playstyle, put him on the Emperor's Champion because a 2-up, 4-up, 5-up is extremely powerful already. And being able to blank damage every phase is remarkable. He survived an Atrapos not only shooting, but a charge and the subsequent fight phase from an Atrapos with no wounds on him. Like he was an
Wow.
absolute beast. I think he may have died once. He did die once. He finally died to Frank, who the first trap was didn't do anything, and then he got smart and tank shocked him with Canis Rex first. So he shot, and I think he did like 1 wound or something ridiculously small. Tank shocked him, got him down to 3, and then Canis Rex did his Canis Rex sweep attack and he wrapped up the rest of them. But that was the only time he did that. That 2-up 4-up, he already gets a 2-up 4-up anyways, but that Feel No Pain is just an extra little defensive buff. So then from round 3 on, I just yeeted him across the board like a missile. In fact, my first death card unit, he was on their objective. He had killed poxwalkers, he had killed a drone, was tying up a tank on the objective, the back objective. Against Imperial Knights, it was the same against the Nids player. I got him all. He got all the way down to the other opponent's objective. Against the Imperial Knights player, he did die in the center, but he basically sat in the center and was doing "come at me, bro" the entire time. And then against the final match, that was the one where I was like, I'm just gonna put him on the center. And that's exactly what I did. I was like, I need you to expose your stuff, so I'm just gonna put him on the center. He's also lone op, so they have to come within 12. So if they're within 12 of him, and then that means I can move up my tank. If they're going to come up within 12, that means my repulsor executioner is always going to have full rerolls because you have to get in within the lone op range. So super multi-purpose for being brave, just doing whatever he wants on the board. The way to beat him, though, just cautionary tale here, the way to beat Emperor's Champion in my book is volume of fire. In fact, I would shoot a repulsor executioner at him because that kind of stuff is really fun. That 2-up, 4-up, 5-up, and blanking damage. But they don't like it when you have like 32 shots coming that way because eventually the ones start plinking off the 5 wounds and he'll die to volume.
Yeah. So I gotta say, people, especially on the Discord, have been like for ages now. Oh, the Emperor's Champion should be lone up. Oh, I hope he gets lone up. Oh, lone up, lone up, lone up. And I was never a believer. I was like, he would be an awful lone up. Like he's squishy as hell. Like yeah, he's got the blank damage, but it's only in melee. Like so, I was not a believer. But so it's great hearing that he can be really silly durable. And I think GW made the right tweaks to him to make him into a viable lone up. Like 8-inch move is huge for him. To like 6-inch move would not get it done because he'd be too slow. You know, and then changing his ability to be any phase, not just uh, the melee phase, and also not like once per turn. It's once per phase that you can blank something. So, you know, it's that's really good. It means you can blank something in Overwatch.
Yeah, yeah.
So, you know, that kind of stuff I think is those are the tweaks that needed to happen in order for him to become a good lone op. And I do appreciate that they also gave him still the ability to lead a unit if you don't want to run him as lone op. But I'm definitely going to give him a try as lone op because now I'm curious, especially you know, folks who have played him as lone op in the Discord server and had success and stuff like that. So I'm excited to try that and see how it goes and become a believer myself.
Yeah, like the Repulsor Executioner was my MVP, but my favorite model, my favorite unit the entire weekend was that Emperor's Champion. It was so much fun to use him around. In fact, I'll challenge anybody to go check this out and try this yourself because I don't know if I'm gonna be able to get to this list, but if I was gonna run another list, and we talked about this, I'd be running Iron Storm with triple rep executioners, Sean Olston, sorry Sean Olston list, which is triple rep executioners and 2 tech marines, but the Emperor's Champion in that detachment gets a 2-up, 4-up, 4-up. Feel No Pain because flesh is weak, and
Yes,
it's a
yes.
cheaper, actually it's the same cost in terms of an enhancements because it's only 10 points. And I was like, dude, that is disgusting. Having a 4-up involve 4-up Feel No Pain and being able to blanket that damage, he just becomes a little god running around for the Emperor.
So speaking of challenges, I've said this to you before, but I'll say it now for the benefit of everyone else. I am now that you've won a GT with Black Templars Gladius, I'm challenging you to win a GT with one of the 4 Black Templar detachments.
Yeah, no, somebody
So
was
doesn't have to be anytime soon, but
Yeah, no,
unlock it and get it
that's
done.
my goal. My goal. So we'll talk a little bit about the rest, what's the rest of the year look like for me, and this also answers the question. I think somebody was asking, hey, looking at the detachments, what would I choose to play with if I didn't have access to Gladius Task Force? Um, um, I would have to say I'm going to try to win with Champions of Behemoths. I think there's some play in this one because I like movement shenanigans. I do like melee, and I think this kind of plays into that. This is the one that allows you to, reroll advances and charges. I wish I had that. I failed two charges that I just felt like I didn't have to fail. They were like 4 inches, and it didn't cost me the game, but it set me back so much. I was like, I really have to fight to stay into this game. So being able to reroll charges would be kind of really big for me. I'm not keen on using Justiciars or Chaplains. Um, I don't think much would change in my list, but I think the Champions of Behemoths would play well for my style. Um, on a broader spectrum for all players, I do believe that the Godhammer has some play. I think that is a solid like B with some really good skill sets at A army, not S tier, but I think this would be a really fun one to play. In fact, I was looking through this and I thought it sounds kind of sacrilege with a detachment, but I don't know if I would actually use Land Raiders with this detachment.
That's
But
how my lists have been going, actually, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I just don't see myself using Land Raiders with the detachment, and I do kind of like the idea of having a repulsor executioner. You could scout 9 with it. Oh, it's a dedicated transport. Okay, so now I can't really do
Yeah,
that. So
dedicated.
yeah, I haven't
And then
really
there's
gone.
me, whose first list with Godhammer was 2 Land Raider Crusaders.
Yeah,
I didn't say
I
it was
say,
good.
and even looking at my current list, I was like, do I add a Redeemer? Do I drop a Ballista Shred and the Impulsor and find the points to get a Redeem in here? Because I do love having things with a 2-up save that's it's T12, right? Yeah, it's T12.
Yes, T12.
T12 and a 2-up save in this meta right now.
And those flamers.
When those flamers and knights are now T11, you now are the toughest unit in the game. And having that Land Raider plopped down, like in the Search and Destroy, the pocket L that I'm talking about, having that just sitting in the pocket, threatening that side of the board sounds pretty awesome. But
Well,
it's also 285 points though.
and
So
then in Godhammer you can drive through the wall.
yeah, what's funny is my buddy Tim and I, he actually drove tanks in the army, I believe, and I know he was in the army and he talked about this. It's like, wait a minute. This tank probably has 1600 horsepower. You tell me it just can't go through some drywall? There's no way this Rogel Dorn can't go through the wall. Your Land Raider can't go through a wall. And guess what now, Tim? My Land
These
Raider
are
can go
these
right
are
through the wall.
Imperium Plasteel or
Yeah.
Durasteel or whatever
Uh,
40k term you want to
we
use.
have both seen
Walls.
tanks go through walls, so and fall into basements. That's why they don't try to go through residential neighborhoods. So yeah, I'm glad that they can do that. I think that it actually is extremely powerful. It's not just because intuitively know, okay, now I'm invisible to ruins, but the number one problem with specifically the Land Raider is parking lot yourself. And it's actually, even in my games against my opponents, against Will, for example. I think I had a little tense because he thought I was trying to take something away from him, but I had to actually show him how not to parking lot his own plague burst crawlers. Because as you move these really big tanky units, some players will be like, "Oh yeah, I'm going 10 inches," and they'll just kind of do this. I'm like, "No, no, 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 no. You got to fit around here. You actually have to fit these things." And they're like, "Oh, I lost like 4 inches doing that." I'm like, "Yeah, you have to be careful." So having a Land Raider just ignore the horizontal distance a little bit there is pretty damn huge. But I still would do it with a Repulsor Executioner instead.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, to your point, you still, even if you're not taking a Land Raider, you still got to be careful with the Repulsor Executioner. It's not a small model. It's still pretty chunky.
Yeah, it's huge.
So I just built
Yep.
my first one, and yeah, it's smaller than I thought it was, but it's also still big.
Yeah. Yep. I've built 3 of them. I got 2 more boxes. I'm rebuilding my entire army. My entire army is being rebuilt right now, so I'll keep rebuilding. Those are just almost just as wise as a Land Raider.
So you're gonna be selling some rep X's here pretty quick.
Yeah. If we segue into like what's next for me, one of the things that I really kind of resonate with me at Atlantic City Open, especially was, my army's not the prettiest. Some models look pretty good. Like I've got a lot of pride in a handful of those things, but I'm time poor. I run my own business. I travel quite a bit. I was in Australia a couple weeks ago just to be in Australia. I do a lot of hiking. So when it comes to the competitive side, like I tell you, everybody, like I'm 100% competitive. The hobby side is like maybe 5% at best, and that shows in my army. I'm the guy that is based the very basics in terms of battle ready, and I'm starting to see that I'd like to start putting some pride into that work because I do believe I paint well. So in fact, I've got models that people are like, oh, those look really really good, but then they look at the rest and they're like, what's going on over here though? So I'm actually rebuilding every single black. I've been part of this community for what 3 years now going on.
Yep.
Imagine all that stuff I just built for the past 3 years. I'm actually going through and rebuilding every single one. I've got brand new Grimald's kits, Hellbrick, all my tanks, even my Whirlwind. I got a brand new Whirlwind. Everything is getting rebuilt and repainted with some love and care this time. So my whole goal is this time next year to not only show some pride in how I'm playing as a player, but on the hobby side, I'd like to be able to say, hey, look, here's some pieces to be proud of.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yep. All right, so a little bit broader look in the tournament world. So this is what we're kind of talking about. So I distinctly remember some conversations with you prior to the release of the book, and I have to clarify: no information was given to us by you if someone's watching. So, but we had it from other sources. So we were kind of talking about what the codex kind of entailed before release and previews there. And you had some concerns about, I don't think it's enough. I think if we're pointed in a certain way, this is not going to be uh, where we're sufficient to win a GT. Now we're the first weekend in with release, and we've already had 2 wins. And it sounds like we had
So much for that
one
fear.
lost in one lost in the finals, and we had 4 or
Well,
5 more
Just kidding.
4-1s, a couple of 5-1s. So yeah, it does not look like that is a thing. So is your mind changed a little bit, or do you think
oh,
we
this
still
is
need some
great.
points adjustments?
This is a great question. Like I was really concerned because here's what I thought was going to happen. I thought we were going to lose access to Gladys Task Force, or we're going to be hyper limited. Like I actually genuinely thought that they were going to really hamstring us for using the codex detachments and put us in a position like I genuinely thought that was the route they were going, and then for us to basically have free reign into Gladius Task Force with these data sheets, that did surprise me. That said, I I'm still disappointed in the book overall. I think it's where the challenge is going to be is specifically is winning a grand tournament with a detachment out of this book. Can it be done? Yes, because one of the things you will learn is, especially when you get to this level of gameplay, is especially when you get a lot of reps in, is when you get to a point where you're soundly beating players. Not all the time, but you get the game, you know what the other armies look like, and you start getting it becomes a matchup game. So yeah, you can eventually play Godhammer and be really good and just get a lucky roll of 5 players that you just tech well into, and boom, you've won a 5-game GT. I believe that's going to happen with this codex. But are we going to see consistency out of the codex, like consistent 5-0s out of the codex, specifically the detachments, not the data sheets, the detachments? Are we going to see a major? I, it's hard for me to imagine that right now. It's possible, maybe I could do that if I get really lucky on these. But when you get into game 6, 7, 8, and 9, that's when the odds get harder and harder, and you really start to see the S tier armies come out, or the armies with phenomenal sense of like what's his name, Scotty with Jakari, like playing an army that's usually not doing so well, but he's
Scary.
Scary, yeah, thank you. Like I believe that can happen. But then I go back to thinking, man, Gladys Task Force is just so easy to play with. um, 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 and that's part of the problem. The other problem I have with this too, and if you don't mind, we just jump right into it, is the data sheets. Here is my overall concern. And so again, Sasha and I've been talking about Black Templars nonstop for 3 days straight now. And then even on the drive home, I drove him home, which was further out of my way, just so we continue to talk about the grand tournament results and how we felt. And we just couldn't shake this piece. Every single list is going to have the same thing. It's all going to be Repulsor Executioners and Sword Brethren, either 2 or 3 or 2 or 3, and they're beatable. It's not. It's rather one-dimensional. That's my biggest fear. It's rather one-dimensional. People are going to figure it out because I know how to beat my own list. Like if somebody comes up with me, I'm going to use Storms of Fire and turn off your cover on your Repulsor Executioner. I'm going to hit you with AP5, and you don't get a save. I have a popular Repulsor Executioner real fast. Sword Brethren, you only need to eat 12 wounds on a 3-up, no invul, no feel no pain. That's all you have to do. I'm like telling people how to beat this army, and it's easier said than done. But that's all. And so when you have this one-dimensional list, and I showed you this screenshot of my teammates already building the exact same list immediately. He made the joke, yeah, anybody with a pulse is going to start 80% of this list with the executioners and the sword brethren. That's my biggest concern out of this. The detachments we can work with, get some wins out of this. The data sheets, we've got 3 really good data sheets. That's the Sword Brethren, there's Repulsor Executioner, Emperor's Champion. The A tier, arguably S tier, and then the B tier, we've got Grimaldus and their Crusader squads, and the rest, and the Land Raiders. And the rest, it's like kind of throwaways. So, kind of my thoughts right now on the Codex.
What about the Castellan and the Marshal?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm sorry. I jumble those guys up with the Sword Brethren. I feel like that's the unit to play those guys in. Is that they just synergize so well together, and they're just disgustingly powerful. Yes, you can put them with Crusaders and all that, but my brain just kind of wrapped them up with that unit there.
What about Helbrecht with Sword Bros and a Castellan?
I don't see. I think Hellbrick would almost be better off with Assault Intercessors. Because you get some extra attacks there and get full rerolls to wound, and that helps with him, or Crusader squads. But when you look at that, especially how expensive he is compared to just doing another Sword Brethren group with the Castell and the Marshal, I just don't think it just is worth the sacrifice there. Comparing the two, I think Grimaldus is
His
better than Hellbrick.
his buffs though are pretty insane on the Sword Bros. Like looking at several of these things, like he into like a gladiator T10 3+ into a like greater demon like T11 4-up invul into a big knight. He just the squad of Sword Bros, Mastercrafted Power Weapons with Helbert and Castellan is literally doubling their damage output. So it's pretty significant, and everywhere else he's over 50%.
So, and how many points
So
is he? So
he's
I
120.
okay. On the flip side, I drop him, and how many points is a Marshal?
80.
80.
So
It's
I
40 point
shed
different.
I shed 40 points, and while yes, you're right, he has all that output, or I could just save 40 points. My repulsor executioners can make up the difference on the damage and soften them up, and then the lesser sword brother unit finishes off the knights. That's the Atropos right now. It's just the standard right now in my head of what I need to kill at the highest level. Though the combination of those two kill it just the same, but I've saved myself 40 points to flex into the MSU universe.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Still gonna take Romaldus though.
Yeah, Grimaldus' play. I like Grimaldus. He's one of my
Or
favorite models. He's really cool.
Helbert, sorry, is what I meant to say.
Oh,
But
I see.
yes, I'm gonna take Romaldus too, because I know everyone was poo pooing Romaldus when the Codex dropped because they're like, oh, the feel no pain, we lost the feel no pain. Oh, he sucks now, and I'm like, especially with Crusaders,
Yeah, and
Romaldus gives the literal two best buffs that you can get for Crusaders. He gives them both AP and rerolls to hit.
I want people
So
to. The other thing too to kind of help Grimaldus out here, guys, is that remember you've got 3 servitors on a 4-up invul, so that gives you
yep,
2 4-up invul opportunities against
and a feel no
Atropos.
pain.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
they still have the feel no pains too,
yeah.
and they
So
don't take up a spot in a transport now.
oh, I did not know that. That's interesting
Yeah,
because Trevi was reviewing my list and Ben's list, and he thought that Grimald's could not get into the transport. Okay, I did not know that. That's
Yep.
cool.
Yeah, they now do not take up space, and they fold up into a nice little suitcase that he carries on.
Get on my back, slaves.
That's right.
So,
So
That's
what you?
actually a nice segue because I was going to ask, because you kind of talked a little bit about we're all going to fall into that, in your opinion, fall into that same mold of like this is our core.
Yeah,
I feel like Ben's list, if you took a moment to take a look at that, I assume, uh, significantly different than
yeah, he,
yours. Well,
yeah. We got.
at
We're
least 50%
mostly the
different.
same. Yeah, he's got Grimals. Shout out to Ben because I tell you guys, 5 games is something that when you get to a point in this game, it's sounds really. I'm not trying to sound pretentious or like blow smoke on my own ass here, but when you get to a level where you're playing RTTs, getting 3 games in a row becomes it just happens consistently when you're really good, especially with a general average player base and the way the matchups work, especially when the RTT is like 30 people. 5 games is kind of same boat too. Depending on the matchup, you're going to get some great players and some great armies. But when you get into 6 games, that means the GT is larger, and usually the top. That's when especially when you have 80 plus players like that. That's when the top 16 are typically really, really good. So that 6th game is always, always tough. It's actually like a cliff. It goes into risk. So kudos to Ben for winning a 6 game GT. I know what was his last matchup against? Was it against a Death Guard unit, I assume, or an Imperial Knights? I don't know if we know.
Actually, I think the last game was Orcs, I believe.
Was it Orcs? Okay, okay, that's cool. But that's that. So that Orcs player went 5-0 before he went up to against Ben, and Orcs are not necessarily something you can roll over. So really kudos to him. But yeah, looking at his list, I love the captain with grav armor. Trevor talked about this, and I agree. If you think about what my role is for the Emperor's Champion was, Grav Captain can almost do the same thing, and maybe in a different way, or maybe in a better way, because he halves all damage coming in, on top of having a 2-up, 4-up, 5-up, and he's T6 with 6 wounds. So there's an argument that in certain situations where the Emperor's Champion dies a volume of fire, the Graph Captain is not going to do that because you're mostly going to be winning on 5s for those 4-0-1 games. So they're both very durable in different ways, but maybe the Graph Captain is a better because free CP every turn. So is he running him? He's not running an impulsor, but if he is, yeah, he is running an impulsor. So if you're running an impulsor, you can farm for CP with that guy. So I like that. He's running Grimaldus. I like Grimaldus. I like Grimaldus. He's running the Lieutenant with Combi. That flexes into the MSU universe as well. Emperor's Champion, he's got an Honor Vehement on that. I like that as well. That is a different take on Emperor's Champion, and he's got 2 Assault Intercessor squads, so I'm assuming he's attached one with that. I thought about that every time I played with the Emperor's Champion in terms of melee, because without rerolls to wound, you're sometimes he'd spike, and I was like, all right, take 9 devastating wounds to your character. But sometimes like, you get 1 save, because I didn't
Yep.
do so well, and I really wish I was able to reroll. So he does become a different type of missile with the assault intercessors. But then, yeah, you see some of the more of the core, the assault intercessors, AIs with jump packs, the ballista shred. The lancers also really good because remember, if we don't have access to oath, you want to find items in our codex that has access to rerolls in some form or fashion, and the lancer has that built in. So that's awesome to have. 2 repulsors, scouts, sword brethren again. Um, yeah, 80. I'd have to say 75% of the list is the same. He has a little bit of a different identity because he's running a more offensive Emperor's Champion as a unit, and still is able to have the come at me bro captain. I love that. And then the extra lieutenant with combi. That's one I'm kind of going back and forth if I should go throw back in my game as well because it's a very powerful tactical piece for scoring.
Yeah, it looks like he took more of a hero hammer, like smash your face list than yours is a little bit more sit back, cagey, take advantage of opportunities list.
Yeah, I am very much I like to control my game, score the cards, and also see what you do and react accordingly. I like to do that. He can afford to be a lot more um, aggressive with this list. That leads me to how many characters? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's the other thing too. I was really surprised nobody took assassination fixed on me. I feel like we just give up all these, we give up all the assassination points. But I thought about that the entire weekend. But then excuse me. Then I realized what would be the other fix that you would take. So
Right. Not many good choices.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, awesome job, Ben. Like seriously, going 6 games. That is extremely tough to win 6 in a row.
Now let's do another 2 to 3 wins this weekend.
Yeah. No, we need to calm down.
Yeah.
I don't need this. If I was doing the, I was
Or in
doing
the
the,
words of Marshall or Missing Link,
yeah.
excuse me, Missing Link. He's like, I'm just here to balance our win rate.
Yeah, shout out to Missing Link. I met him. Actually, I played him. Uh, I don't know if it was the last. It must have been the last Dumpster Fire GT actually.
Last
One of
year.
those. Yeah, last year. Yeah, that's where I met him. He's brought up with Black Templars. I'm like, oh, Black Templars. Yeah, I know your list. I know your list really well. And it turns out he was, part of the implausible nature community. And then this was his.
Yep.
No, this was an RTT because this was his first GT.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's right.
So this is very first GT. We're actually standing right next to each other, by the way, at the table. So we're on tables like 6 or 7 or something, right next to each other, which is really cool to see. Great painted army, and his opponent in front of him is Brett, one of my teammates, who's a career Imperial Knights player with a triple Atropos list. I'm like, good luck. um, but he put up a fight. Brett even said, "It's like, yeah, he didn't just like sit down and just die to a bunch of knights. He put up a fight. He got 2 wins out of that GT." And I've told people like if you want to see a GT with some lines, go to Philly, any of the Philadelphia ones, because that's again Derek Apshe's down there, Sasha's there, Marcus Butler. There's a lot of high Nolan who took second, who's an incredible world leader. But there's a lot of powerful players, and he played some tough opponents. Again, he played the same Eldar player that I played against, and the problem with that is excuse me, that Eldar player had just played me with that list, so he had, a second chance at the same list. So I think that worked against Missing Link there. But he still pulled out 2 wins, including against Imperial Knights. So really awesome job there. Getting 2 wins out of a grand tournament is a very tough ask. So
Yep.
he's got to be proud of those results. Hopefully you are proud of those results, Missing Link.
Yeah, absolutely. It's especially for your first one. I can't imagine he didn't get clocked, and that's a tough ask for someone in their first go. It's like all of a sudden you're like, bam, okay, I'm on the clock. Like that stress of being clocked for the first time is huge, which is one of the reasons why I recommend you go out and buy one for those that don't have them. If it has any plans of going into a tournament, play it in your casual games. Just get used to seeing it and feeling it and using it, because that's my number one
Oh yes.
advice for you, other than like the food and hydration and all that stuff beforehand. That's pretty standard, but you need to clock yourself. If you don't clock yourself, you're going to be in trouble when you get to a tournament, because your opponent's probably going to be using one against you.
Yeah.
Yep. I will say clock management is not only important for yourself, but it also helps keep your opponent honest. I cannot tell you how often Sasha and I have regretted not using a clock. Not because we are fine with our time, it's because we were sitting there waiting for an opponent who just took an hour off the clock, and we didn't have a clock. And there's been a number of times where I called Judge over, hey, can you put us on a clock real quick? So I'm realizing the guy's taking. Just get used to it, and then it's just second nature. You just put it down on the table, you just do it. It's you're not going to offend anybody, and if they're offended, that's on them. It's just the nature of grand tournaments. Everybody's using a clock. I was actually surprised. I think one of my opponents is like, "Oh, I've never been on the clock before." It was on one of the later games. I'm like, "Oh, well, yeah, this is just as good for you as it for me because I got a repulsor executioner, but and I think a lot in my command phase. But yeah, you're right, Bob. Get used to a clock if you don't already have one. If you want to be serious about Grand Tournament, go buy one and start practicing with it.
Yeah, they're pretty cheap. They're like $5 on Amazon.
Yep.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, unless you have anything else, Bob, I think we've
I'm
taken
sure I
up.
will.
I think we've taken up enough of David's time. So thank you so
Never
much.
enough.
Thank you so much for having us or allowing us to have this time with you. We really super appreciate it. Always love having you on the channel. Always love talking to you. You provide such great insights and whatnot into the top level tournament scene, and just the meta in general. So always a pleasure talking to you. I know our you know followers and subscribers and Discord members and everybody all really appreciate it as well. So thank you.
Yeah, of course. Pleasure to have me. A pleasure to be here with you guys because, listen, I started this career, and you guys were the first channel I latched on to try to catch up, and you guys have done a great job of catching me up. So I'm glad to give back in
Good deal.
any way I can.
Awesome. Well, again, really appreciate it. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. Also, I want to give a special shout out to our newest Patreon member, Rolu. Thank you so much for subscribing. Really appreciate that. If you're interested in joining our Patreon, it's implausible nature, excuse me, patreon.com/implausible nature. Multiple ways to support us. We also have YouTube memberships. We could not do this without you guys, so we greatly appreciate that. And a ton of cool things that you can get with that subscription. So come check us out there. Check us out on our Discord as well. A lot of great talk going on every day there. David is on our Discord as well, so you can hear from him directly, which is always nice. And until next time, keep
Don't
on
forget the
crusading.
dice. Don't forget the dice. Because I use your dice. They roll lots of 5s and 6s.
Yes.
Yeah,
The
exactly. It's the magic of the implausible dice. I'm telling you.
people
I'm
comment on
telling
those
you.
the Baron of dice that you got your guys' versions. People comment on those times all the times like I've never seen those crosses before. Yeah, it's a plausible
Yep.
nature dice. 5s
pretty
and 6s.
soon pretty soon we're going to be having a limited edition set come out.
Nice.
So yeah, awesome, good deal. Well, thanks again, and until next time, keep on crusading.